This entitled granddaughter thinks she can steal $12,000 from her billionaire grandparents and get away with it.
You disgust me.
But she gets the shock of her life when it comes time to read the will. Happy birthday if today's your birthday, and on with the show. So this is a generally long story, dating back about 8 or 9 years ago, from the beginning until now. I'll throw in a bit of context here to help you understand the situation a little better. My grandparents, on my father's side of the family, are really well off in wealth. They practically own all of the lands within a small city environment that was inherited from my grandfather's father before him, and split between himself and 2 siblings. They do business in renting out the land to companies, farmers, and homeowners, from my understanding. This has brought my grandfather's life worth up to roughly about $2.8 billion within his lifespan before he passed away. My grandparents encouraged a lifestyle where we need to make our own way within the world, but they are willing to help out with certain expenses such as school funds, rent, home ownership, and sometimes even smaller things like vet bills, shopping, etc. Now we can get on to the story. So about roughly 9 years ago, my sister had graduated from high school and had earned a 2-year scholarship to her dream college, but couldn't afford much more than that, and wouldn't be able to buy everything she had needed for those 2 years. Our grandparents had graciously decided to help her out with the funding. They paid for her dorm room, her transportation fees, her books, her food tickets, and everything else she would need for the 4 years or so that she attended, even granting her extra money for anything else she might want to do on the sideline or anything she might need for school. This included monthly paychecks for gas and extra food. So my mum gave her our old car, my grandparents paid for everything else she'd need, and she was off for her college experience. Throughout her 4 or so years of college, my sister changed her major 3 times, failed to graduate because of constantly changing her classes, and spent a good majority of her money on partying and hauling her friends around, taking everyone out to expensive restaurants and eating out often. There was a time during her years attending college where my grandparents had overpaid. They forgot they'd paid for the year's dorm and classes already and sent in a double payment, where the school decided to refund their money, but sent it to my sister instead of back to them. She never bothered to ask about where it came from or who it belonged to. She just decided to waste the extra $12,000 that she got back on partying and eating out more often than she had before. Because more money, right? This greatly upset our grandparents, because she had stolen their money without even bothering to ask them about it to begin with. As she was supposed to return it to them, this was the first mistake she had made with them. By the end of her last year, she was supposed to graduate. Still had a ceremony, but didn't graduate any specific class or job choice. Everyone decided to join together to help her celebrate her time and effort in school. We're talking around maybe 20 people who flew in from all across the country to join her. This included great aunts, great uncles, cousins, our aunt, our dad and stepmom, stepmom's grand crotch goblins, and finally, our grandparents themselves. It's likely, although not specifically known of, that our grandparents had paid for everyone else's travel expenses, including plane tickets, hotel rooms, and more. Our grandpa was in very poor health at the time already. He never traveled because it was hard on him. Strapped to an oxygen tank and wheelchair bound at the time, for them, it had been roughly a 9-hour drive to her college. She was located high up in the mountains, which only made it harder for our granddad to be there. So everyone had gathered together from far and wide to help celebrate her achievements and congratulate her personally. But my sister was in a pissy mood from the very beginning, and conveniently decided to have a mental breakdown, which was basically her just throwing a tantrum. And she basically, in short words, decided to say screw it. She blew everyone else off and avoided them like the plague. She talked to our dad and stepmom, and that was it. She refused to talk to our grandparents and ignored everyone else who had shown up before leaving the campus. I spent time with our grandparents and our other relatives in her stead, because holy heck that was rude. Even I hate her for that. and then I left with our mum to help her finish packing up her dorm room so she could move back down to the city, which, by the way, she didn't help us. She just sat there huffing and being pissy the entire time we hauled everything out to her car. So we finished and we got a phone call from our grandma, Nanny, who said that we all needed to meet up with them in XX place because they had all gathered together at the hotel they were staying at to throw her a very expensive party to celebrate with her. But my sister decided to ignore them and went to visit Dad instead at his hotel shortly before making a straight drive back down into the city. This was her second mistake, which greatly ticked off our grandparents and relatives. She didn't give a frick. So a few years passed by. My sister never really cared nor tried to keep contact with our grandparents, save for the one time she approached them to show off her boyfriend, and Nanny had torn into her over how disrespectful and rude she had been. To which my mother defended my sister and lied about the money she stole had been her own. And eventually, in October of 2017, our grandfather started ailing beyond a point of returning. His body was starting to fail and he was getting ready to pass on. We had to force my sister to join us to visit him one last time before he passed. He had passed away on the 17th. He, deliberately we believe, cut his oxygen supply off and let himself go after all their family and friends had gotten to say goodbye for the last time. So now it was just Nanny, and I swear, every time I visited her, which was often after he first had passed, she was going off about my sister stealing from them and being disrespectful, and how Mum was trying to cover for her. And I knew, I mean it wasn't anything new to me, my mum would always defend my sister's every action, good or bad. But I did eventually try to gently tell her to let it go, that it wasn't worth clinging onto. It'd only stress her out and make her unhappy and miserable if she did. She didn't want to let it go, and I doubt it was over the money in general. I believe it was more because of her disrespectful attitude and coldness towards them. Granddaddy had a will written out that granted all of us, even my sister at first, roughly $150K to $280K in a trust fund that would continue to grow over the years, but wouldn't be accessible to us until after Nanny died. And, well, I guess 3 years later, she still hasn't been able to let that incident go, because we just got a letter in the mail from the lawyer about a week ago, saying that Nanny removed my sister from the will. I don't blame her for it. My sister is a real piece of work. She's money hungry, spoiled, just bad in general. She's our mum's little angel, so she gets away with everything, and she never thinks or cares about anything she does. My mum got so angry about that letter that she actually threatened to sue my grandma for removing my sister off the will. She went as far as to call my grandmother to complain about it, but chickened out of going off on her because Nanny is one of those people you don't want to tick off. She instead demanded that I share my portion of the will with my sister, and I told her no. She's an idiot. My sister deserves this, and I'll never see it as anything otherwise. She only ever visited for money. She never bothered to speak to them otherwise either. Whether they accepted her warmly or not didn't matter. She was extremely rude and never felt any remorse for her actions towards them or anyone else in the family. I don't blame her for removing my sister. As of now, it's her money and her right to remove my sister if she feels it necessary to do so. My mum is an idiot for wanting to take her to court over it. My mum has never seen a problem with how disrespectful and rude my sister had been and continues to be, and that's exactly why she was removed. My grandma says Granddaddy did it before he passed. Whether that's true or not, I doubt it honestly, but in any case, I don't blame her. My sister is like our parents, greedy, money hungry, and selfish people. Those grandparents were incredibly generous, and what's her response? To basically take advantage of them. Well, that $12,000 she stole ended up costing her hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah, I hope it was worth it. You got everything you deserve. Nothing. You know, most people don't expect to inherit that kind of money in their life. So what's all the more sweeter is that she's gonna have to live the rest of her life knowing that money could have been hers if only she had been a little nicer. The characters. There are a lot of them, sorry. Me, my mum, my aunt, mum's sister, my good uncle, my grandmother, my grandfather, my cousin, my dad, my bad uncle, my other cousin. The backstory. Grandmother and grandfather bought a house on Cape Cod when mother, entitled aunt, and good uncle were kids. Then they all had kids and it became a family summer house. After grandmother and grandfather split a long time ago, grandmother kept the house. A while after, G became unable to care for the house, moved to a nursing home because of dementia, so mum started to take care of the house on Cape Cod, because she was the closest. Mum and good uncle pay for improvements on the house, and the work to keep the house looking nice. Entitled aunt does none of that. Mum sometimes can be a Karen, but she has gotten much better. The same cannot be said about EA. She is almost the classic Karen. Loves essential oils, is obsessed with her babies, and barely has a job. She quit her job for the toe of becoming a yoga instructor. I don't know if she vaccinates her kids, but my guess is probably not. When she took over, Mum asked her siblings and everyone else who used the house not to wear strong perfumes or colognes because I am very sensitive to strong scents, and I get bad headaches and really nauseous. I am so grateful that Mum did this, and all my family was respectful, except for entitled aunt. If anything, she started wearing stronger scents, claiming that they weren't perfumes, they were incredibly strong essential oils. Entitled cousin and I have never really gotten along, and there is a story behind almost all of the family photos that we have of something nasty that she has done to me. I try to be nice around her, but she and EC2 treat me like their personal servant. EA and Mum do not get along either, and have not gotten along since they were kids. Since EA threw their grandmother's, then passed down to Mum's antique dollhouse out of a second-story window. Good uncle and dad try to moderate EA and Mum when they can, but that doesn't always happen. Entitled uncle quietly works on egging Mum on, and supports entitled aunt in all of her horribleness. Grandfather comes and goes with his girlfriend, but usually stands by EA, but wants the two of them to get along. Now to the first story. Story 1. I admit that I act a little entitled in this story, but whatever. 2 summers ago, I had a lemonade stand about a month before EA and her family were supposed to come to Cape Cod. I paid for everything to make the lemonade on my own. Lame is anyone? No? Okay, I'll shut up. Except for the first batch, which Mum bought, and then I paid her back for. Our house is a perfect spot for a lemonade stand, because it is by the beach. It's a good way to make a lot of money, and I would always donate half of the money I made to charity. Anyways, the week that EA and family arrive, I have sailing lessons for an hour a day, every day, for a week. Mum has work and dad is not there. On one of the days, I am gone for an hour, and then I come back with M to see EC and EC2 set up with a lemonade stand, and with my lemonade mix. I'm confused, but I go inside to wash the salt water off my arms and face. When I go inside, I see EA making a new batch of lemonade, and when she sees my face, she smirks and says, "You had a lemonade stand without my kids, so now they are having one without you." I probably shouldn't have done this, but I run upstairs to my room, sobbing. They were using the lemonade mix that I had paid for, and using it all for themselves. Mum goes upstairs to see what's wrong, and I tell her what happened. She just smiles kindly, has me stop crying, and says, "I can pay to get more lemonade mix. Why don't you go downstairs and help your cousins?" I help them for the rest of the day, and they make me clean up the pitchers and the table that they used. When EC is counting the money, she makes about $100. I try and ask for some to pay me back for what she used. Lemonade mix is cheap. There are 3 types, normal, pink, and raspberry, and it is about $30 for all of it, but I probably shouldn't have asked for some of the money. Wow, I'm going to get so much stuff with this.
Yeah, me too.
Can I have some of the money to pay me back for the lemonade mix that you took from me? You know that I paid for that, right?
EA said that your mum paid for it so we could use it all.
That's not true. I paid for that with my own money. Can you please pay me back?
No.
Are you gonna donate any of it to charity?
No, you don't get any of it.
Me, being naive and prone to emotions, run back upstairs again to cry. Mum comes to ask what's wrong again, and when she finds out, she just says, "Okay, why don't you stay here and calm down for a bit?" She then goes downstairs and I hear part of EA and Mum's conversation. OP paid for that herself. If your kids aren't going to pay her back, you should at least.
No, the mix was out in the open.
With OP's name on it.
Well, I didn't see her name.
It's on all of the packages.
Too bad, it's a family house. Everything is for family. OP had a lemonade stand without my babies, so they had one without her.
You and your family weren't coming for a month, and OP was bored. Today, OP was gone for an hour, and you think that is the best time to have a lemonade stand? That's all of the conversation that I heard, but I know that there was more. Story 2. Last summer I went back to my normal routine of cleaning up after my cousins. Every day I would pretty much be in tears at the end of the day. Finally, after about a week of this, Mum had taken enough of it. One morning, in the kitchen, EA said something offensive to Mum, which set her off. EU was glaring at Mum from the corner. Dad was trying to calm EA and Mum down. EA and Mum were screaming at each other, and I was in the middle of it all, drinking my Starbucks Frappuccino. It was like watching a ping pong match made of insults. It just kept going back and forth. This is roughly the conversation, but with much less swearing. You never clean anything. You come to the house and make a mess that I have to clean up.
That's not true. You're just a control freak.
That is true, but you left EC2's dirty diapers in a trash can in your room for me to clean up 2 years in a row. Just to point out, EC2 is 10, but this is a whole other story.
That's not my fault that he still wets the bed.
And I'm not the only one who has to clean up you and your kids' messes. OP had to clean up EC's art projects all the time. She's in tears almost every day.
That's not my fault. EC doesn't make any messes. And OP is in tears every day because she is a crybaby. I have seen how you treat her.
At this point, I have heard enough and ran to one of my many hiding spots. Later, Mum found me and apologized for everything that EA said, but EA herself never apologized. EA and EC both had friends coming to Cape Cod that day, and when EA's friend arrived, Mum was working on fixing something in one of those rooms. While giving a tour, EA said, in front of Mum,
"Sorry it's such a mess in here. My sister is not very neat."
Almost everything in the room was EA's. Later, EA decided to take all of us down to the beach except for Mum, who went down on her own. Mum owns the beach membership and EA knows that, but still decided to lie about it. While we were eating lunch, EA said to her friend,
"Yeah, this is a private beach and my parents pay like $10,000 for the membership."
That is not true at all. But EA didn't want to mention her sister. Mum and EA spent the rest of the trip not in speaking terms, and we eventually left. In the fall, Dad was talking to EA on the phone to try and fix things, and EA revealed that she had recorded Mum during the screaming match. EA also said that she frequently listened back to the recording. Through a little digging, I discovered that Massachusetts is a two-party consent state, and it was illegal to record someone without their consent. None of the people in the room where it happened, Hamilton, knew that it was recorded besides EA and EU. If Mum wanted, she could sue EA for a lot of money, but Mum, being nice, decided not to, and instead to write an LLC for the house, stating some rules that EA would have to follow. EA and Mum no longer talk on the phone, only through email. Story 3. This summer, because of the virus and everything between EA and Mum, we are not overlapping with EA and family. The LLC states that everyone has to request and approve their vacation times, and Mum and family did that in February. 31 days was approved, and Mum requested time off from work in November. EA, not having a job, requested 42 days a week ago. It overlaps with Mum's time, and as stated before, EA doesn't pay for anything, doesn't work on the house at all, and has no real job, yoga instructor. Her schedule is reasonably flexible, but Mum's is not. In an email to Mum, EA stated,
"We have no cancelled classes for the kids this summer, and my classes are uncertain, but probably virtual only. Also, MV won't happen this summer as we can't share the house with EU's parents for fear of sharing germs. So we are looking at spending more time at the Cape than before. Here are the dates I'd like to be at the house with my family. Can we make this work, or are you going to be stubborn?
She then requested 42 days, which blocks off the rest of the family from going to Cape Cod. EA and her family are coming from New York, the virus capital of the US, as mentioned above, and she has said it herself. Her neighbors have the virus. She is worried about sharing germs with EU's parents, but not the rest of her family. EU works in a hospital and deals with the virus all the time. If they come to the house, they risk putting the rest of us in danger, and risk not cleaning properly, and giving the virus to Mum, who has severe asthma and would most likely die if she gets it. That's the thing with family. Sometimes you're just stuck with them, and you can control how you react to them, but you can't control how they treat you. Yeah, unfortunate, isn't it? I think the mum and the uncle are being a little too generous here, seeing as they put all the money and effort into maintaining this place. It sounds like they could probably ban her from going to it altogether. If she doesn't keep pushing her luck, I'm pretty sure something like that is going to happen. Submit your story to be read on the channel at voiceyherestories@gmail.com and join our Voicey veteran community at r/VoiceyHere. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode. Alright, Voicey veterans, I'll see you in the next one.